If everyone could take their seats.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The event is starting now. Thank you so much for your cooperation and understanding.
Okay, we're going to get started. Okay, welcome everybody. Please take a seat. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Kate Orff. I'm the program director for the urban design program at Columbia. David Smiley, beloved professor, and I are your co-hosts for this evening. Woohoo! We are here to celebrate our dear colleague and friend and teacher, Grahame Shane. So on behalf of Dean Andres Jaque and the entire urban design program, we could not be more thrilled to take some time to really appreciate and celebrate and acknowledge Grahame's incredible imprint on our school, on our thinking about urban design, past, present, and future, and really put forward his legacy in urbanism and urban thinking. So we're going to give a brief introduction, and get ready. I want to say a few words. I might actually stay on this slide rather than my agenda slide, because the agenda slide is boring. But today, we're going to have a brief introduction by me and David, get some remarks from Grahame. We have a number of testimonials, both in person and online. We're going to read, and we're going to have a birthday cake, but it's also just a celebration cake. Grahame is turning 80. But first, let me be annoying and just ask for a show of hands of who's in the room, because I see many familiar friends. First of all, how about family members of Grahame? Here we have family members. Hooray. Thank you for coming. And thank you for sharing your Grahame with us over these many years. Let's have a show of hands for urban design alum. There are a number of urban alum, in the room. Congratulations. Thank you for coming. Representing just a huge cross-section of alums. How about urban design faculty past and present? There we go. Our colleagues, yes, both urban design faculty and alums, lots of crossover there. And how about current students? There we go, lighting up, current students, they always sit in the back. Way to be, students. Thanks for coming. But here we go. We're here to both toast and roast Grahame. And who could imagine this cherubic individual child here on the left with his blonde hair? How could this innocent child here sitting on for an advertisement, I believe, for, what was it for? A vaccination advertisement. And how could this absolutely innocent individual turn into the acerbic and witty urban critic sipping a coffee that you see on the right? So we want to highlight this transformation and really acknowledge how Grahame has, here he is with Konjan Yu, has really kind of helped to shape his stories. And I would just say Grahame, personally, I've learned so much from Grahame, not just as a teacher, but he is a master storyteller. You might begin a conversation thinking that you may be eventually talking about super blocks in China, but you end up in a very different place. And I think that's one of his incredible qualities, is that he's pulling together, weaving together narrative of knowledge, of history of urban design, and also simultaneously challenging us to think differently about technology, about the future, and about the cities that we're making. He's an incredibly dedicated teacher and has been teaching recombinant urbanism, of course, also housing at GSAPP, since for practically 40 years. And he's been an incredible, not only a member of this community at GSAPP, he's been really a key member of what I would call a global community, a global discourse around urban design that has been shaped in many, many different ways through conferences, his work in Italy, his work, I was about to say Italy and Europe, excuse me, his work in Europe, his work in China, and points beyond. And so he's really helped foster, while being a part of the urban design community, he's really helped foster the community of scholars that comprise urban designers and our PhD students. Many of you know his signature publications. You've been assigned these publications in your classes. I see some PhD students who worked on some of these publications here in the audience. But of course, Urban Design Since 45, A Global Perspective, and Recombinant Urbanism have really been key publications that have helped to shape the field. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David Smiley to say a few words. Thank you.
Hi. I'll just leave it like that. That's good enough. No other pictures. It's such a thrill to be here to honor a great scholar and a great person, a joy to talk with always and learn from. So I want to say hello to everyone. Thanks, Dean Haka. Thanks, Kate, and everyone who's here who more or less made this possible. I've known Grahame for a long time. If you've known him for one semester or a few decades, you just need to be reminded a little bit how kind, generous, wise, witty, and what still has a sense of wonder and curiosity that still is very important, really important. I hope to be able to last that long. I'll come back to that, though. Just a little background. Grahame studied at the Architectural Association, an important node in architectural and urban discourse and pedagogy over many years. In fact, in his 2005 Recombinant Urbanism book, you'll see tiny images of his 1970s work. Look carefully. And besides, he hung out there with that rock band, also known as Archigram. Soon thereafter, he moved to Cornell to do a Ph.D. with Colin Rowe. I don't know how that happened. I hope to hear about that. Yes, Collage City 1978, with earlier versions, as you might know, which defined urban design for a generation, which brought us the figure ground, which still has its uses, and yes, which many of us read in this very building, and also which included a drawing of Graham's. For some reason, he went back to Britain, teaching at the AA and mentored by Alvin Boyarsky, who ran the place from 71 to 90, almost 20 years. Boyarsky was a very amazing scholar himself, and encouraged thoughtful and challenging pedagogical work during the neurosis-inducing era when modernism was under well-deserved duress and architecture was struggling for legitimacy and a sense of self. Then he got a break, returned to the US to complete his PhD and teach at Bennington College, which I swear to you he recalls very fondly. In 1985, we got him here at GSAPP, and to be honest, I was a student then, although I did not meet Graham, I don't think. I was kind of clueless. In these years, he started intensive teaching and publishing, and soon after, he and a few profs here at GSAPP, some perhaps in the room, started rethinking what an urban design program might be. But that is a story for another day and others to tell. During those years, he wrote about Paris as a city, contextualism, London, urban design conferences on postmodernism, deconstructivism, on Stephen Hole and other architects, and about his good friend Michael Sorkin. All of this before 1990. Some of you weren't even on the planet yet. Since that time, he has written on malls and towers in Asia, villages as a global settlement type, on the nature of blocks and superblocks and megablocks, and more recently on urban design in the Anthropocene. It should not go unmentioned that Grahame took it upon himself to learn from China and to make China a part of his oeuvre. And he's gone to great acclaim on both sides of the Pacific, and for that we are deeply indebted to him. But he always had a soft spot and good gossip about New York City, so we're glad he's still here. And we'll meet him at Le Monde any afternoon. His first big adventure in publishing was already a synthesis of his design, historical, and analytical interests in 2005 with Recombinant Urbanism. It's not an easy book to read, as his idea of narrative appears to come from James Joyce. Why, we might add, what is recombinant? It's a strange term in many ways, but it fits. It's a form of research and production that entails splicing and joining, the process that accounts, on the one hand, for classification and sorting, which in turn enables overlaps and new combinations of elements. This is a rhizomatic practice, not a word I usually use, which means nonlinear, decentralized modes of thinking and working, of joining unconnected concepts and spaces, creating heterogeneous assemblages. We're not in Collage City anymore. Recombinant as method seems to explain the role of conceptual modeling as well, that is, of iterating and testing and evaluating, which is his goal. Recombinant is a polemic, a position about how to learn, how to plan, how to see. It is a theory of the city, with many citations for Kevin Lynch, and an exploration of methods of city transformation. It is thematic as well as historical. We move across times, spaces, scales, and ways architects and urbanists have worked and continue to work. A few small points. For Grahame, way ahead of most of us, the modernist, rationalist master plan was part of the problem. In fact, he might say that we face competing rationalities all the time, even if in practice that might not seem the case. Another point, the book is a deluge of images, diagrams, notational charts, language charts. In some, up till then, 2005, some of his years already of urban thinking and pointing towards possibility. And each image, small though they may be, pokes the reader and says, check this out, check this out, check this out, and ask the question, what is urban design? One other point about the book is that we are introduced, as you well know, to the terms armature and enclave, about which we could have quite a long discussion. The armature, a street, a linear space, a perspectival space. The enclave as a square centered, but also about neighborhoods and precincts. It may seem a bit much, but remember, we're talking about competing rationalities. That's a term that I think fits many of the ways he approaches the work, both quotidian, accidental, as well as organized and rationalistic. Just to stick up for New York one more time, in the book, there's a great discussion of New York City special districts, a kind of chapter of art history that is dear to my heart, anyone who likes New York in the 70s and 80s. Finally, in recombinant urbanism, we learn the term heterotopias, multivalent readings, productive ambiguity. He says that heterotopias are exceptions to a dominant urban system, a dispersal of major hierarchies, with no particular or preset formal roles or rules, but programmatic and performative and experiential possibilities. We'll come back to heterotopias. In 2017, we have urban design since 1945, a global perspective, and indeed it is. It's a vital reference as a history for those of us looking at urban design positions over time, but in my opinion, it also demonstrates conceptual modeling of the first book in even more stronger ways, more synthetic ways. The book is crisply organized by chapters on metropolis, megalopolis, fragmented metropolis, mega and meta city. And if you're in the room, you don't need me to explain any of those, so I won't. At first, these appear chronological, but in just a few pages into the book, we realize they are not. They might be typological, excuse me for using that word. They're descriptive, spatial, not sequential. In fact, we might step away from those types and say that for simplicity's sake, Grahame is looking at two sets of protagonists and emergences and changes. One set of actors. There are a million actors with values, positions, and interests, but not all with the same power, and thus we have uneven and spectacular, at times, growth and development. Actors make models, make predictions, respond to feedback, not always in the right direction or not always in a direction that I think is right, but that's okay. And the second part of the second strong point of the book is to understand the continuing influence of the idea of recombinance and splicing and dicing. Now, fully flowered in UD since 45, added to that is information, data, and flow, which had been emergent in 2005, but just over a decade later, the Internet of Things, the Internet of the Air, has become pervasive. And already in 2017, Grahame was speculating on that. And despite the fact that from 1945 to some other date we don't know, implied by the title, time in the book is not linear. Histories and sites and projects are mixed. And if the so-called types are more like iterations, they appear in moments and different moments in different projects. That is how urbanism happens. Thus, the book could actually have a subtitle, Recombinant Urbanism 2.0. Since armatures and enclaves do not disappear, but become more generally descriptive. And secondly, because the incredible diagrams, charts, and studies give evidence of Grahame's intense pedagogy, intense focus and concentration, and an intense commitment to teaching and showing how things get done and get thought of. His pedagogy is powerful. So one more bit on heterotopia. Now that it's fully formed as heterotopias of crisis, of deviance, and of illusion. I don't have the time, desire, or ability to flesh these out, sorry, but a little bit. They have historical reference points in medieval, modern, and in my opinion, neoliberal kind of temporal frameworks. Others might say that's postmodern, we can discuss. But in fact, all of these heterotopias act as contemporary. They can happen in the same time, the same cities, in different positions, from different institutions, and through different fantasies. They are not necessarily time-based or temporal. And from Foucault, as you know, from whom this is interpreted, whose social analysis and heterotopias was also vague, it was nevertheless an important part of a system of describing, from Foucault, how societies and individuals are created, how social norms shape us, thus how cities shape us, and how populations are managed, that is, how people are made to get along. And this is all a very spatial project. This is also why recombinant works so well, because of the continuous overlapping and splicing and integrating that is part of urban life. So from this, we can see how heterotopias enable us to step beyond social norms and spatial norms. And I also suspect Grahame has utilized heterotopia to ask students to see and ponder spaces and organizations that are somehow nonconformist, ambiguous, and even troubling, so too to enable students to look beyond functionalist or solutionist approaches. Perhaps the greatest challenge to us in the creative and purposeful field of urban design. Oh, and then there's architecture too. Finally, it should be said that Grahame has developed a key focus on the heterotopia of illusion, the most, I could say current, but it's not current because it's timeless as well as time-bound. And in a 2008 piece, he follows more or less a path, a critical path that I would agree with, that illusion, like consumption, enables temporary satisfactions, and working through Benjamin, and then bringing along Baudrillard to hammer home the order of the simulacra. I feel I'm comfortable with this critique. But his last paragraph makes me really want to slap him around a little bit. He says, heterotopias of illusion and their supporting networks will play a role in the development of new, local, modern hybrids that facilitate the shift towards a more performing, flexible, and mobile urbanism of sites. So there you have it. Grahame will always be an optimist. And for that, bless you. Thank you. Mr. Shane, Professor Shane. Let's see.
Yes, it's in there. It's just the next slide.
It's showing up there, but it's not showing up here. So let's just do that. There you go. So it's forward on the right.
Can you hear? Yes, okay. This is so exciting, moving, humbling, so many different emotions, and very, very special. Thank you all, actually everyone, for being here. And well, I have 8 slides, and following on, I need a book to answer David. And I love that baby picture, and it was used for inoculation after the war. But this slide is really, as an architect, trainee, student, where I came from. And this is the AA faculty and Bartlett faculty, the London scene of 1970. And, you know, I don't know where to start. Cedric Price down there with the cigar was an incredible urbanist and had this idea that the city should change and grow, and was into systems and how modern systems were different than modern architecture, and a whole, in fact, really biopolitical approach. Then on top of him, with the big glasses, was my 5th-year master doing a handstand, Peter Cook, who had tried to sell me an issue of AD in first year in 1963. I wish I'd bought it. It's worth $7,000 now. And then behind him is Reyna Banham, the great scholar who, Reyna Banham loves LA, theory of design in the first machine age, implying there's a second machine age. Beside him to the left, Brian Richards, who was a friend of Colin Rowe later, but was a big traffic engineer in London who advised me on my thesis. There's Warren Chalk in the middle with the moustache and the lots of hair, who was in the bar at the AA at 11 a.m. and available for critiques from Archigram. And then next door was Sam Stevens, who lived near my parents, and I would see him on the subway going to school, and he'd start talking. And it would, you couldn't escape. He was the history theory teacher. Hal Bracken was the housing guru who went to MIT. Colin Rowe, who I went to study with off on the right with his profile. And then flying up above, there's Alvin Boyarsky in the Village, and who who organized the International Institute of Design, which is an advert for, and James Sterling, another Colin Rowe student. Both Boyarsky and Sterling were students of Rowe, and Sam Stevens had gone to school with Colin in Liverpool. I could go on and on. And then Dennis Crompton in the corner there below Sterling, who did the Network City diagram in Archigram and organized almost everything that Archigram did, and became a very close friend and just died very recently. So this was my uncles, if you like. I'm afraid I could put in some ladies, and I would put in Monica Pidgeon, who was the editor of AD, and met me in the AA bar and asked me to write essays, which you can't explain this stuff to anybody today. It makes no sense at all. Anyway, I'm going on too long. And so this was the imaginary space that I inhabited. This is Diana Jowsey, who worked for Archigram, the cover, front and back cover of the book. I worked for Archigram for a summer. And it gives a sense of the kind of space. Now, what I see in it now is the strange landscape with the tree, with the little electronic door in it, the famous ectoskeleton. And there's so many projects in here making a new landscape with the modern systems imagined in this sort of void. It's not really worked out very well. But I realized looking back, landscape urbanism for me in 2003, I did an article in 2001, Harvard held it up for 2 years and put it in 2003. Landscape was a very big part of what I was about, and you'll see again. And then there's the walking city, Ron Heron, in the East River, which was, nobody knows this, but it was intended for the United Nations to go, these emergency vehicles would go to where earthquakes had happened. Don't ask, right? Next door is Zoom, the issue that Peter tried to sell us. Oh, wow. And the screen has changed here. And next to that, Pop-Up City, which was this page that opened out and the city popped up with their tall, thin skyscrapers, which now populate 57th Street. And then you can see the floating city of Peter Cook. He came from Bournemouth. This is Bournemouth Beach being turned into a kind of fun fair with all this urban equipment that could infiltrate the landscape. And I questioned them as a student. Gowan was Sterling's partner. Gowan was my tutor, and the people who are in the class at the back have seen this all before. Maybe most people have seen this before. But the chess set, I used Rickwert's book about the Roman foundation of the city and how it had this sort of public space in the center and the elements around it and the wall, and then I put it to the chess set with the different urban actors. This is 1968-69, not so bad. And then I did a whole thing about London with this river, the Fleet River going through it. And if you go to Farringdon Station where all the London trains cross, it's in here. And they finally made a Farringdon Station on the Elizabethan line just last week, you know. So I was way ahead, you know. And then on the right, I think, you know, I showed all these drawings to Zaha and the different students in '72, and I think this way of looking at the city in layering, transparency, blockage, and then these connections in 3D, people picked up something from it which often I didn't really realize at the time, but which came back to haunt me. And so I went from this group of uncles and Monica Pidgeon to Cornell, and I'm not going to stay here too long, but Tom Schumacher down at bottom right, and his contextualism, urban ideals and deformation was really important to me because it took the Kuhnian ideal of system and questioning system and put it into urban terms of how the ideal would be maneuvered by context. And Alvin had done a thesis on Camilla Sitte, who is one of the gods of this approach, and Vidkoa, who taught here, had done a whole book about which Rowe had been an assistant on, about British art in the Mediterranean, of how Italian ideals got twisted in England, and this whole idea of the ideal and deformation, which comes back into recombinant, which David really picked up on. And then I was really quite an angry young man in those days. I thought these Corbusian schemes were really rotten, and I was pretty brutal, actually, as a student, and Colin accommodated me. I mean, it was pretty amazing. Rem went to Colin and got the same treatment, and they had a big bust-up, and he went to Ungus. But Rem, we were friends, you know, and I learned from him throughout my life, as I learned from Bernard, who was also in the summer sessions, and Michael Sorkin, who I met through the summer sessions, the IID, with all these uncles. So, okay, we're moving on. I was the nasty rebel student, and I took London apart, and Colin loved it. You can never tell with a teacher. It's just impossible. And I took it apart from Gowan, the rivers and the streams coming down, the different big estates that lasted through the centuries and are now owned by, well, Saudi princes and oil, the Norwegian oil company, these huge chunks of London that were so important in the history. And you could do it on the other side of town. This is the residential side. You could do it on the industrial side in the docks with the India, China, all the trading coming into these vast estates of docks. And then I cut, so those are the enclaves. And then I found that they had cut these, oh, whoa, it's gone back small. Does it change up there? No. Okay, no? Good, okay. And then I found that there are these armatures, these streets which came with the sewage and the electricity, the water and so on, and cut through. And in my scheme that I did for Colin, I had been to Denmark, and they'd pedestrianized the center of Copenhagen, and I proposed to pedestrianize these enclaves. It's happening now. Covent Garden, which was the focus of my study, is pedestrianized now. And it was the Greater London Council did it. And it's a wonderful tourist place, which was not exactly what we imagined when we fought for it. Anyway, this is due to Susanna. I don't know if she's in the room.
Yeah, she is. Raise your hand.
Yay, way back. who was my first RA and who made this website, and many other people have participated in this voluntary activity during COVID. And it's top secret because I don't want ChatGPT, or whatever it's called, uploading it. But you can go, if you look for cargo and recombinant urbanism, you'll get, there's 100 articles over the last 40 years. So it's 4 articles a year. Or no, I can't remember how many. It's something ridiculous. Anyway, but they're all there. And David has given you a really good reading on how things shifted over time. And I have to say that when I stepped down as co-director in 2000, and the program had reached 50 people, I was really happy, and I was really free to go traveling, and I did a lot. And I was very happy to be reunited with the program with Kate 10 years ago? Yep. Yep. And as our program changed and became an international program, my travels seemed, and I learned so much from Asia. I always thought of Rainer Bannerman going to LA as like he was on the outer edge of the Pacific and seeing all these cars and loving this stuff. And then I went to Asia, to Hong Kong, to Japan first, then Hong Kong, then Shenzhen, and then through wonderful ex-students into China, and I met really incredible urbanists there, and they were building like you couldn't believe. It was like, it was, Regina, my wife, said, it's your late great Matisse period, where you etch and sketch on a huge scale. Anyway, not to go on too long, there's a lot of articles there, and it sort of traces contextualism evolving and changing, and then the sort of metabolism of urbanism jumping scale in a way that I could never have imagined. They rehoused the population of the United States, 350 million people, in 15 years. I mean, you just can't imagine that. It's unbelievable. And so, anyway, I was breathtaken, but also, at the same time, there was a micro-urbanism, a whole critique developing that was very beautiful. And I tried to map that in 2011, in UD since 45, I tried to map this process that I was seeing and how it went into the meta. I wrote about this with Brian McGrath when he was here, the meta city, and we worked on this together, and then he went off to be dean elsewhere, what can we say, downtown. And but the whole idea of the handheld, which I think was really accelerated by COVID, and then how it maps down into the block and the super block and into micro-urbanism is another whole story that I'm still exploring. And then I did a talk 10 years ago, I don't know, for a conference about Colin Rowe, about the different genealogies, these 4 lines of thought about cities and how they wove together. And I started, and the Helen Poliferou, who was the founder of the Genealogy of Urban Design Group, GUD, she picked me up on it, and I've been working with her ever since, and I will in the future. And hopefully, Dean, we can link to you in the future. But it's a whole idea of the layering of the city, which, thank you very much, and the different energy systems and metabolisms that work in the city. I bring it back to London, my hometown, and then to Sandy, which the whole collapse, which is why urban design is such an urgent idea now. But I don't want to end on a sort of negative note. So my last slide is a homage to my daughter, Rachel, who is here. She is a puppeteer, and a creative. And she works with this performance arts cooperative. And when little Amal, who raised money for the Aleppo refugees in Europe after the civil war in Syria, when she came to New York, Rachel was the community outreach coordinator, and I'm very proud of the work she did. They went down, of course, to Wall Street and occupied the Bull, and the costumes that we were upstate for COVID, she used our house apartment to manufacture the costumes, and so there's bull's heads right the way through the living room. And I think that's where I'm going to end. Oh, and I want to go back, just one thing. For me, and I honor my dean here, he made a circle in Lowe Library. And Seth Lowe was, actually, I'm really getting into the history of the campus, don't ask. But Seth Lowe was a radical in his time and really reorganized how the university was made and brought it on the Hill. And the dean made a community circle under the dome, and I did a little talk. I was honored to be part of it. There was 500 or 600 people involved. And I talked about how this is the heterotopia. We need to begin again, start over, and try and remake it all better than we did last time. There were mistakes. And that's why that's in the middle of the slide here. And we can, in these hard times, still make a difference and don't give up. And that's really for the students at the back. I'm going to keep going. Watch out.
Thank you so much, Graham, and I love this inspirational note. I'm going to, in a couple minutes, invite everyone down for cake, but I did want to just start off. This PowerPoint has a whole set of video testimonials and written testimonials. I'm going to just quickly read through a few. Here's Ken Frampton. In his 40 years of teaching urban design at GSAPP, Graham has greatly influenced my own ideas about urban form and process through his comprehensive study, UD Since 45, which appeared in 2011. Of particular consequence for me, following Gottman's coinage of the term megalopolis, was Shane's crucial distinction between megalopoli, frequently capable today of carrying populations from 20 to 30 million, and fragmented metropoli, which he calls telecity, topping out at around 12 to 15. I can hear Ken Frampton speaking when I read this. Sorry, thank you. I'm getting emotional. His other seminal contribution is a scalar definition of the urban block, ranging from the traditional perimeter, as determined by a street grid and mega block of a kilometer square, close in effect to Stephen Hall's linked hybrid enclave, realized in Beijing over the years. Moreover, his invention of viable stratagems to deal with the conscious layering and servicing of megacity form, that is to say, with inserting into spontaneously aggregated form, such as public transport, rainwater harvesting, and sponge city strategies to deal with flash flooding. And I'll say Ken emailed me multiple times and sort of revised his remarks and was sad to be able to miss it. I wanted to also, Bernard, our colleague here, just wrote a kind of haiku poem. We'll miss you and your armature and enclave, inside and outside, bypass, go through, cut through, under and over diagrams. We'll miss your sense of humor and global perspective. The incredibly esteemed Paola Vigano wrote, "To me, Graham is more than a professor. He's a man of conversations whose roots are those of a tree. They trespass continents, cities, architecture, philosophy, politics. Their depth and relevance is such that after a few decades, I always discover unknown trajectories indicated by them. Of this, I would like to thank him and celebrate this moment with all of you." Marta Gutmann, I will not read this in its entirety, but shared some incredibly wonderful personal anecdotes, in particular, telling a story around Michael Sorkin. the late great. Recently, Graham and I spent some time in the Sorkin reading room at the Spitzer School of Architecture, reminiscing about Michael, our dear departed friend. As Graham immersed himself in the room, the conversation changed course, and he shared a spirited history of his encounter with architecture schools, architects, books, places, and people, Berman, Rowe, Verne, and so many others. Graham, you will ever be the teacher, the dedicated friend, the generous colleague, the collector of stories. Let's meet again in the reading room, and this time I'll have a tape recorder in hand. And Ph.D. students abounding, and also many students wrote, and many of you in the room, I've just pulled one, which I think was very typical of many of the students' responses, just wanting to take the opportunity to express their heartfelt gratitude and appreciation for his mentorship and guidance. His insights and philosophy have had a lasting impact on me as I continue to practice and grow in the field, and best wishes. So of course, Graham will continue to be an incredible member of the GSAPP community, and hopefully will keep the students coming and researchers coming. It's his last year of teaching his epic seminar. So what I would like to do now is just invite everybody to come down to the stage. We want to cut the cake, and I was thinking I would play some of these testimonials in the background. I'm not sure how that would work, but what I do want to do is give sufficient time for everybody to just gather and meet each other and exchange some words. And for now, just please join me in thanking Graham for his incredible body of work that has shaped urban design, his scholarship, and his collegiality. Thank you, Graham.
Cake, cake, cake.
So let's cut the cake. Boom, you're going to help us cut the cake, right? Okay. Let me see if I can. No, don't.
Hey, Graham. We've known each other a long time. I often say we're friends, and you're right. But you're also my mentor and my teacher. We've known each other since you were teaching at Penn all those years ago. And when I moved to New York, you were the only person I knew. And we've kept in touch ever since. And you always are there for me. I always appreciate it. And you've always, inspired me with all your teaching, and all the lessons have informed how I see cities, and also my confidence in being someone who knows how to teach and how to communicate what a city is and why it's there, and how to design with it, in it, for it. So I wish you a happy day and celebration, and I wish I could be there. All right, bye from Singapore.
Good job.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, because the call for scholarship, I
Hey
thought was
Graham,
also
Brian here.
broad when I
Happy
read it.
80th
It's like,
birthday and congratulations on 40 years of teaching in the urban design program at Columbia. It was great to share 15 of those 40 years with you, starting 30 years ago. And it was a great moment to teach at Columbia, given the introduction of the paperless studios and the internationalization of the student body. So we had great fun watching the cohorts of students grow in numbers, and you know, they continued to inspire me, those former students. It was great to travel the world with you, Bangkok, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and it's really great to be, was great teaching with you day to day. I like how you taught me not only the tools of urban design. I was an architect, never trained in urban design. It's kind of thrown into teaching in the program. But also that you always made us take a tea break at 3 p.m. And for you, it was, of course, the chocolate cake they had downstairs. And so, I think I cherish most the humanity and those wonderful writing opportunities we had together, the AD issue on sensing the city, close up and remote, and the formulation of, you know, the meta-city theory that we did for the architecture theory handbook. You know, continue to hope to see you, and best of luck with retirement.
My acquaintance with Graham is quite recent and yet quite intense. It dates back to the last Colin Rowe conference in 2017. Urban design and our common contacts from our AA years of study were at the very beginning the core of our discussions. He invited me at Columbia for the short-term leave in 2018, and on that occasion I had the opportunity to get to know him better, experiencing firsthand his intellectual curiosity and vivacity of spirit. He encouraged my work on Doxiadis, which was gradually turning into a genealogical research on urban design, and he was among the first Americans to join the International Network of Genealogy of Urban Design, GUD, which I launched in 2020. I was extremely surprised more than once by his genuine humility and generous behavior. Though well known worldwide and a crucial contributor on urban design historiography, he never imposed his authority. On the contrary, welcoming new perspectives, even when critical to his own standpoints. This open and constructive atmosphere allowed us to keep a close contact throughout these years, by organizing together panels at international conferences on urban design history and circles of seminar on contextualism as a global tradition within the GUD network. Our online chats last for hours, and when we meet, we pass from lunch to tea time and from appetizers to dinner. Meeting and talking to Graham is a joy for the intellect. A strolling through time with autobiographical anecdotes, encountering new people, places, and ideas, and a brainstorming session all at once.
Hi, it's Leonardo Zuccaro-Marchi. Hi, it's Leonardo Zuccaro-Marchi from Italy. I met Grahame Shane, I think it was in 2009, 2010. I was a Ph.D. student in Venice with Bernardo Secchi Pallavigano, and I was always invited as a guest for the workshop, summer workshop. I remember I shared with him my PhD thesis of the heart of the city, and he appreciated it, and he said, okay, I read it. Now, please, let's go to Padua and visit the Prato della Valle together. I said, wow, why not? That's where I'm here now, in Padua. And after that day, we visited Padua together, contemplating Cappella Scrovegni, Orto Botanico, Prato della Valle, and other monuments. I think we started a very good friendship. He always comes to Padua and visit the city. We contemplate monuments. We went to visit Palladios and another great architecture around the Veneto region. And we met several times. I think for me, my research is urban design perspective, legacy and heritage research was always a basic reference. Because it was one of the first one who really discussed the heart of the city and the street of the 20th century in a journal, in the Cornell journal in the 80s. So during PhD and postdoc was a reference for urban design genealogy. But after that, I appreciated working with him, collaborating on several conferences, seminars, and traveling together several times and visiting cities together, learning from him how to understand the urban design working in the city. If you go to London with him, he will know everything, will tell you everything about each singular street of London. I think for sure he needs to publish a book on London, I already told him. And then I appreciate it as a person, very respectful person, and also learn also how to live, how to love, how to traveling with his wonderful wife, Regina. So a big hug to you, Graham, and Regina as well. And I hope to collaborate soon with other collaborations, seminars, or jazz concerts, whatever in life. Thank you very much. Greetings from Padua.
Hello, I'm Eugenia Vidal. I graduated from the UD program in 2002 when I first met Graham as my teacher at the Recombinant Urbanism seminar. We have been in touch over all these years, already more than 20, and I have many great memories with Graham, but for today's event I would like to focus on one that I'm especially grateful for. Graham, this is your support with my PhD dissertation. Thank you so much for coming to Barcelona. This was fun. And thank you so much for being part of the jury. I have to say that I have reread the notes that you prepared for the final discussion many times, and I have found them always very useful and inspiring. Thank you so much, Graham.